Knowing when and how to say no is one of the most important life skills that we can develop. Unfortunately, many of us struggle with saying no. And as someone who has struggled with this in the past, I certainly can relate. We either feel guilty saying no, or we don't want to deal with the conflict that may come with saying no, or we even convince ourselves that we should be saying yes, even though deep down we really want to say no. Now in this video, I want to share with you some ways that I figured out how to start saying no, and how to look at saying no in a way that makes it easier to say no. But before we get to that, let's first discuss why saying yes to everything is a problem. There's 4 reasons why saying yes to everything becomes a massive problem. The first is that it leads to a lower self-esteem. When we say yes to everything, even though we want to say no, we lose self-respect. We create the subconscious belief that asserting our needs and our desires is not important enough. And as a result of that, we build resentment, not just towards others, but towards ourselves, because we are not willing to stand up for ourselves. The second is that an inability to say no and always saying yes strengthens fake relationships. If you are truly afraid of speaking your mind and sharing your real authentic self and saying no when you want to say no because the person on the other side might react by attacking you, if that person does in fact attack you when you are asserting your needs and you are being communicative and you're being real, raw, and authentic, then that person is probably not your friend. And so when we fail to say no, when we fail to assert our needs out of fear of engaging in conflict with another person, we may very well be strengthening fake friendships. Third problem is that it results in poor time management from overcommitment. When we say yes to everything, we have trouble managing our time, which creates stress and anxiety in our lives. And number 4, as a result of this overcommitment, it also leads to broken promises. So not only are we strengthening the false friendships that we have with other people, but we can also be jeopardizing the real friendships that we have with real people by overcommitting and under-delivering. Now, before we get to the action steps on how to finally start saying no, it's first important to understand why we say yes in the first place. The first and most important reason why we say yes, even though we want to say no, is because as humans, we are wired to be social and cooperative. Our brains are essentially wired for the jungle. Because human beings lived most of their existence before society and before civilization, in what I will refer to in this video as the jungle, our brains are wired for the jungle. And in the jungle, if you did not have a tribe, you were not going to survive. And so the thought of creating conflict with our tribe triggers a survivalistic instinct in us to not get kicked out of the tribe. The problem is that we don't live in the jungle anymore, and while there's many benefits to being part of groups, we are not necessarily going to die by being alone. And so when we can understand that this impulse to say yes comes in large part from this animalistic, survivalistic instinct to stay alive, and we recognize that that is not serving us anymore, it becomes a little bit easier to say no. A second reason that we can say yes when we want to say no is due to a lack of self-esteem. If we don't hold ourselves in high esteem, then we believe that our feelings and our thoughts and our desires don't matter, and so we subordinate them to the feelings, desires, and thoughts of the other person. Now, obviously, this is not a healthy way to live because we must honor ourselves and our needs and our desires in order to live a healthy life. And on top of that, if we don't honor ourselves, we are going to find it very hard, if not impossible, to honor other people, especially in the long term, as that resentment starts to build up. This lack of self-esteem can also lead us to say yes due to the associated fear of missing out or the associated fear of rejection. In other words, when we don't hold ourselves in high esteem, we seek validation from others to make up for that lack of self-esteem. And the third reason that we say yes is that we fear that we are going to lose our friends. Now, this is a little bit different from the first one that I was talking about, where I was talking about the survivalistic instinct of our jungle wired brains. This is more so geared toward the psychological and emotional and even spiritual aspect of wanting to be with people while we are on this earth. In other words, not wanting to be alone. But if you have to understand that if honoring yourself and your needs pushes someone away, then that person is not for you. And as soon as you understand that, even though it can be hard to sever those relationships, you all of a sudden start to build and grow self-esteem, and over the long haul, it ends up being much, much better, because not only do you push away the people that are not good for you and are even fake, but you also start attracting the people that are right for you and that are real. And now let's finally get into the action steps that we can start taking today to start the process of saying no when we want to say no. The first is to understand that by saying yes, you are also saying no. Every decision that we make has an opportunity cost, which is just a term that describes what you miss out on when you make a decision. So for example, when you have the chicken for dinner, you're missing out on the steak. When you study finance in college, you're missing out on engineering. And when you say yes to others, even though you want to say no, you are saying yes to others while saying no to yourself. You are missing out on saying yes to yourself. Now, it is just logical that you as a human being deserve respect, just like any other human being on this planet. In fact, the person you must honor most is yourself, because number one, you are stuck with yourself for the rest of your life, and number two, if you can't honor yourself, you are going to find it very hard to honor others, especially in the long term, as all those yeses that you give to other people when you really want to say no start to build resentment. The way I think about it, I believe in God, and I understand that God gave me. He didn't give me person A or person B or person C. He gave me. This is who I am living as on this earth. I am the only person that will be here my entire life. To honor myself is to honor God. If I don't honor myself, then I am not honoring God, because I am not honoring what He gave me. And if I can't honor myself, how can I honor other people? So it's important to understand that being real and saying no when we want to say no doesn't just help us, but it helps other people as well. It helps us because we end up doing things that we actually want to do. We don't end up doing things that we don't want to do. We don't overcommit. We don't burn out. And we experience less psychological distress from saying yes when we actually want to say no. Likewise, it helps other people because when we're honest about what we can do, we are seen as more reliable and more trustworthy, and we end up building stronger, more authentic relationships. In the end, people will respect you more when you don't overcommit and under-deliver. Number two, stop over-explaining yourself. Be honest and brief. If you want to say no, say no. But you don't have to give 1,000 different reasons why you want to say no. Just be real, explain the reason why you want to say no, whether that's you don't want to go, you have other things to do, and then just leave it at that. Oftentimes, and I know this from personal experience, over-explaining is a trauma response that we learned earlier in our childhood. Due to a variety of factors that were outside of our control, and oftentimes even outside of other people's control, we developed this coping mechanism of over-explaining as a way to survive and as a way to protect our ego. But the way I like to think of it is that I have to remember that a person's true character is shown when they don't get what they want. And so I take this a little bit to an extreme where I subtly don't give people what they want from time to time, particularly in the beginning of a relationship, because I want to know exactly how they are going to respond to that, particularly in that exact moment, how I feel that person responding when they don't get what they want. And so when you say no to someone, you're not just honoring yourself, but you're also testing that person's character and revealing that person's true character. And by saying yes or over-explaining yourself when you say no, you're effectively enabling that person's lack of character if that person does indeed lack character. Now, this is not good for you, the other person, or for society. So be real, say no, be honest, be brief, and don't over-explain yourself, especially if the other person starts pushing you to over-explain yourself. Number three, and one of my favorites, is that if you want to learn how to say no, start by reframing your guilt. When you say no, you are not being selfish. You are protecting your energy so that you can be more present and authentic with those people. Instead of saying yes when you want to say no and being 50% of yourself, you say no to the things that you want to say no to, and you say yes to the things that you want to say yes to. And when you hang around those people, you are 100% authentically you. And that is what the world deserves. It deserves your true, raw, real, 100% authentic self. And that's what you deserve too. You deserve to honor yourself and not hide and present this fake persona to the world that you actually wanted to say yes when in reality you wanted to say no. Now, while a certain level of wanting to please other people goes a long way in producing pro-social behavior and helping us all get along as a society, people pleasing, like over-explaining, can often be a trauma response. It can be an unhealthy coping mechanism that we learned in the past to deal with stressful situations, particularly stressful interpersonal situations. The problem with people pleasing is that you are undermining your own self and your own needs and your own desires in favor of others. And while we all have to make sacrifices in the social world, a chronic habit of people pleasing leaves you depleted and resentful. When you chronically fail to honor yourself and you chronically put other people's needs above your own, you will not only deplete yourself, but you will also build up resentment. And that inner depletion and built up resentment will make it that much harder for you to honor and respect other people. In other words, if you don't honor and respect yourself, you're going to have a very difficult time honoring and respecting other people. And also, people pleasing reinforces the belief that your self-worth is dependent on the opinions of other people. Building up that belief is a fast and surefire way to destroy your self-esteem, because self-esteem is of the self. And if your self-esteem depends on other people, it is not truly self-esteem. There's actually a term for that called pseudo-self-esteem. self-esteem, which is essentially a false version of self-esteem that is prone to fall apart very easily. And the fourth action step is a little bit obvious, but it is to practice saying no. I promise you, as somebody that struggled with this for my entire life, it gets easier every time you do it. And every time you do it and you feel guilty, go back to one of the action steps that I just mentioned so that you can reframe your guilt and reframe the experience in a way that is positive and beneficial and empowering to you. And so when people push back, you're able to not let that get to you and you can stick to the plan. And also, as you start saying no, you'll start finding life to be a lot more fun because you're a lot more free to be yourself and to be real. No longer are you bogged down in the shell of yourself that feels like they need the validation and the approval of others to feel okay. You are okay because you have a good opinion of yourself that is not dependent on the opinions of other people. And you understand that if you can't be real and authentic with other people, and if people respond to the real and authentic version of you negatively, then that person is just simply not for you. Or even worse, they are people that are trying to manipulate you to be the kind of person that they want you to be. So in other words, when you start saying no and you start to feel more free and your self-esteem starts to rise, you start to make positive associations with saying no, which makes it easier to say no in the future. Now, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, I think you'll really enjoy this video that I made about how negative people hold us back and how it is the #1 reason that people feel stuck and don't end up achieving their goals. And as always, if you enjoy this kind of content and you want to see more of it, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and click the link in the description box below where you can sign up for my weekly email newsletter where I send you content like this every Monday via email to get you started for the week. Other than that, I'll see you in the next video.